Welcome to the Engaging People podcast. Today we are doing another segment of Employee Engagement Goes to the Movies, where we consult the silver screen for powerful lessons of what to do and what not to do to create the right employee experience. Today we'll be talking about The Intern, a film that came out in 2015 starring Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. Just as we did before, if you caught our last episode, we record a video clip that goes along with this podcast. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. It's about this film as well. You can look for that on our website as well as social media platforms.
The plot of The Intern is a retired 70-year-old widower, Ben, played by Robert De Niro, is bored with retired life. He applies to be a senior intern at an online fashion retailer and gets the position. The founder of the company, Jules Austin, played by Anne Hathaway, is a tireless, driven, demanding, and dynamic workaholic. Ben is made her intern, and though Jules never intends to give him actual work, Ben proves to be quite useful, and more than that, a source of support and wisdom to others, both personally and professionally.
I thought it was a lot of fun just to watch these two interact.
Yeah.
Just the Ben, Robert De Niro kind of ends up ultimately taking on this almost like a grandfather figure.
Yes.
To Jules, which she really didn't even know she needed. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I just loved the dynamic that it became this natural bond between them, and I think it speaks a lot to what we'll be touching on as we show some clips here in just a minute. So we both watched the film. We identified some lessons primarily from these two leading roles, from Jules and Ben, that we think can really help leaders create a more engaging experience for their employees. So the first clip we're going to roll, you'll just hear the audio, is about recognition appreciation. When Ben first arrives, this shows one of the elements of the culture of this company that we thought was kind of neat.
We just hit a record high of 2,500 likes on Instagram.
And that's what we do when something good happens around here.
So Spencer, I know we talked about this clip shows principles about recognition and appreciation. What did you think about this clip?
I think the aspect that stood out most to me really was that, as was mentioned before we rolled the clip, that this was really embedded in the culture of the organization, just this idea of recognizing when someone does something positive. I think it's really great when organizations can achieve that. That type of positive feedback can kind of create space so that when harder conversations need to happen, because all of us need feedback on what we can do better, it almost creates this balancing effect that it's okay. We share positives, we share negatives, but in a way that we're trying to help each other.
Yeah. Help
each other be better.
100%. I think that principle of recognition is so important, and I've actually done research on the power of recognition. Recognition has been proven in studies to actually increase employee engagement in the workplace, like we've just talked about. And O.C. Tanner actually has a study that shows that the correlation between effective performance recognition and employee engagement, the correlation is at a rate of more than 2-to-1. And in that study, they asked employees the question, what is the most important thing your manager or company currently does or could do to cause you to produce great work? And the number one answer of employees was recognize me. And I think that's because recognition really does, like you said, build that sense of community. It helps increase employee morale and just increase overall employee engagement.
It's interesting. One of the topics that often comes up as I'm working with leaders in 360 debriefs is this idea of leaders asking their people how they want to be treated. And I think it applies nicely here to recognition, because not everyone wants to be recognized the same way necessarily. Mm-hmm. It's kind of one thing to have kind of a cool culture where it's like we ring the bell when something good happens, and that's great.
Yeah.
And I think leaders also need to tap into the desires or the preferences of their people.
Yep.
Someone that's a bit more introverted may prefer not to have as much of a spotlight shined on them. They might prefer the aside private thank you or an email or something like that. So I think it's good to tailor the behavior, I guess, to each person.
Yep, I like it a lot. So let's go to the second clip now. We entitled this clip Taking Ownership. You'll see Ben kind of taking control of a problem in this next clip.
Oh my God, somebody cleaned up that desk. I swear I was gonna stay late and do this myself.
Wasn't me.
Ben came in at 7 this morning and did it.
Who?
Ben, your intern.
Ben Whitaker. Someone's very happy.
Brilliant. Thank you. Best thing that's happened around here all week.
Thank you.
All right, Kenneth, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I loved this. I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was so impressed at Ben's proactivity. He just took ownership completely. He saw a problem. He saw this huge pile of stuff that just congregated every day. And I'm sure he noticed that Jules was so frustrated every time she saw that pile. It just bothered her. And he seemed like a pretty intuitive person and employee. So I just thought it was interesting that he saw the problem, whether he noticed it bothered Jules or just saw the problem that he could help solve. He took complete ownership and he demonstrated that proactivity. It wasn't his assignment. It wasn't even the area that he sat in, but Ben saw a way to help. He came in early to the office and he just got it done.
Yeah, I thought of an experience I had a few years ago. I was meeting with a group of business leaders, and one of them shared, so this is kind of a secondhand story, I guess, but it's still really powerful. He shared an experience that he had as the CEO of his company, trying to really solidify the organizational values. And he didn't want them to just be what unfortunately happens a lot of the time, which is just sayings that are plastered on the wall and people kind of don't even notice that they're there. He wanted them to be alive in the organization. And one of the key events that really was an epiphany moment for the whole organization, they had just moved into a new office, and there was this one wall that was just this ugly color. And the CEO commented on it a few times, like, I need to come in and paint that and fix it. So obviously he was a CEO, very busy, didn't really have time to come paint a wall. One Monday morning he arrives at the office and the wall was painted. It was exactly the color he wanted. The mess was cleaned up. There was no evidence that anything had changed other than the fact that the job was done. And he asked around and found out that a new employee had caught wind, had heard that he wanted this wall painted, and got access to the building over the weekend, got the supplies, got the wall painted, and didn't expect anything in return. Again, back to kind of the recognition piece. He just did it because it needed to be done.
Yeah.
So he took that initiative, similar to how Ben cleaned off the table just because it needed to be done. And so this organization ended up choosing as their first value power to paint the walls. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the story that they would tell. It became legend, just that this employee had done that, and that they wanted to create a culture and an employee experience where employees felt that they always had permission to take that type of initiative. They didn't ever need to feel like, well, I'm worried about getting in trouble for coming on in on the weekend, or having barriers like, how do I disarm the security system to come in on the weekend, or whatever. They just figure it out. And I think that's an awesome thing when organizations can set the tone in that way, just as we saw here with Jules' company and what Robert De Niro's character did by taking initiative in that way.
Yeah, it's a powerful principle. It reminds me of, in the movie, Ben his favorite quote is, "You're never wrong to do the right thing." And I think that he completely demonstrated that. It sounds like that employee in that company did as well. It's awesome.
Pretty great. So this next one, then, we're going to see an example of empathetic listening. It's kind of how we've tagged this one. So check this one out.
Becky?
I've been here 9 months, Ben, and she's never asked me to take a look at anything for her ever, okay?
I hear you. That's frustrating.
I mean, totally. I graduated from Penn. I have a business degree, but I never seem to do anything right around here. And you're like 50 years older than me, and you're deaf.
I happen to think you do a lot of things right.
You do so much.
I know that. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't. I mean, she never notices. Oh my God. I hate girls who cry at work.
How about if you, just as an experiment, try letting me help you? A lot of your stress is going to be lifted once you're out from under this mountain of work. And maybe you should consider leaving here at a normal hour once in a while. See your friends, have a little fun.
So, Spencer, what principles did you glean from that last clip about empathetic listening?
Well, first of all, I think, again, I'm a Robert De Niro fan. I'll disclose that, right? He just does a great job, like appearing to be very authentic in being a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
Being willing to just not try to go in and fix the problem. We know that, whether it's in a family relationship between a husband and a wife or whatever the case may be, or in a work relationship, it's easy to sometimes feel like we got to go in and fix it. But he didn't try to do that. He just listened, and he used statements that helped kind of affirm the way Becky was feeling, like, sorry you're feeling this way, I can understand, this sort of thing. So empathetic listening doesn't have to be, again, it's not the fixer mentality. It's just a willingness to go in and listen and validate feelings, again, how someone feels, not saying whether they're right or wrong, but just, I understand how you could feel that way, that sort of thing. It can be really powerful. Again, this reminds me also, maybe because I already mentioned some 360 experiences, but in 360s, we'll need to do that sometimes when we're working with a leader who's received some feedback that's more difficult for them to process. I'll even have them become tearful on the phone, men and women alike, sometimes, because it's really hard to receive feedback where it's like, I'm not creating the same experience as I thought I was or that I intended to, and being able to have someone there just to, again, to kind of validate the feeling and to demonstrate that, hey, we're in this together, their arm around the shoulder type of a posture, like we're going to figure this out. I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think empathetic listening and listening in general is just such a huge part of leadership, and something that I loved in this is that, well, I mean, we saw in the movie that Robert De Niro, listened to literally everybody in the company. Everyone felt like they could talk to him. And I think it's interesting that empathetic listening can come into play even when the comments are about you. That's, this clip, Becky was crying because Ben had been assigned to help her, and she's crying and saying things like, you're 50 years older than me and you're deaf and things like that, which I think some leaders or some people could take offense to and decide, I don't want to be empathetic or listen to this, it's about me. And he just said, yeah, that's frustrating, I'm sure that's frustrating. And so I think the power of empathetic listening, no matter what it's about or who it's about, powerful principle.
I like that you pointed that out, because we learn in the movie that Ben's character, or Robert De Niro's character, had been very successful. He had been a vice president of an organization in several different ways for many years. So, like, to your point, he could have easily been like, who are you talking to? Look at who I am. And he could have had the ego kind of burst at that, or, expand at that point. But rather than that, he was sure of himself and just was willing to be the comforter as opposed to some type of negative response. So that's pretty
I agree.
admirable.
Always ready with his handkerchief.
Yeah, there you go.
So this next clip we decided to plot, we entitled Caring Personally, and we'll hear the audio of Jules taking a customer phone call.
Okay, let me just review this with you. You have 6 bridesmaids. You ordered 6 of the silk chiffon Antoinette dresses in pink. The wedding is in 3 days, and the dresses just arrived all in charcoal gray, which we don't even sell, so that is a bit of a mystery. Okay, here's what we're gonna do about this. I'm gonna call the vendor and have this fixed today. I will personally see the dresses before they are FedExed, and I promise you they will be at your front door by 9 a.m. Friday, okay? Let me give you my cell just in case. 718-555-0199. Oh, thank you so much for your patience. And I am going to refund you back all your money. Yes. No. Okay, hey, you check this one off your list. Okay, this is done. And Rachel, have a great wedding. Oh my God, how did that happen?
Jules?
I know, I'm late for something.
Yeah, everything.
You see why I take customer service calls? I mean, it's so good. You learn so much.
Okay, Kenneth, so as you heard this CEO spend time on the phone with an individual customer, what were your takeaways on this one?
Yeah, I was just so impressed at the lack of ego in the character of Jules Austin. I mean, she's the founder and CEO of this hugely successful online fashion company. I think they said it took like 8 months and huge success. Yet she cares enough about her employees, about her customers, to take the time to take those customer service calls. I love that she's making sure she's seeing what's happening on the ground level, more able to relate to customers and employees alike. And she just said at the end, it's so important. This is why I do this. And just incredible. I think it completely exemplifies that principle of caring personally and that lack of ego, kind of a humble leader.
Absolutely. I like the kind of the principle also, and this builds on what you shared, of just being willing to get into the trenches with your people.
Yeah.
It's like she could have, again, similar to the prior segment, she could have said, I'm the CEO. It's not my job to spend time on the phone with a customer, for example.
Yep.
There's another scene a little bit after this. We chose not to include in the audio just because it was only music, basically.
Yeah.
But it depicts her going to the warehouse where the product is being fulfilled. And she had noticed, she'd actually taken the time to order one of her own products and have it shipped to her home. And she opens it up and it's poorly packaged.
Yep.
It just doesn't meet their standards. And so she takes the time personally to go and work with this team. You can just, her nonverbal cues are, again, caring and supportive. They're not, she doesn't demonstrate that she's upset or reprimand anybody, but rather just kind of walks them through each of the steps of how to fold the packaging in a way where the presentation will be phenomenal once the customer sees the product. So it's great that she's willing to take that time, I think, to step down to that level.
Yeah, such an incredible example. You know, she doesn't send a memo, she doesn't send an email, she doesn't, you know, even make a phone call like, hey, this needs to be packaged differently, make sure you're doing this. She took the time to show up in person, and obviously it was important to her, but I love that she explained kind of the why to the employees, why it was important, how it was important, and yeah, just an amazing example. So we kind of took a key takeaway from all of these clips from the movie The Intern to the power of one, that, you know, the power of one person to make a difference. Good people can make a difference. And we just can see in the film The Intern that one proactive employee can make a difference, one dedicated intern can make a difference, one humble leader can make a difference. And so the power of one to make a difference.
We talked before we hit record on this episode, we were talking upstairs a bit about an organization can have all the right processes, they can have a great product, everything, they can have a nice office, like all these things can be in order. And if they don't have people who are willing to make a difference, who are okay not getting recognized every time, who are there to help support other people as opposed to getting the credit, and you know, just the different elements that we see depicted in the film, it's really for naught. It becomes just an empty building with a bunch of products that no one ever wants to buy because there aren't good people there to fill the gap. So I think that's, I love how you put that, just the power of one. Okay, so as we prepare to wrap up here, it's time to give our engagement score for this movie. The criteria behind the score is how well it embodies good employee engagement principles.
Our scale is simply from 1 to 10, 10 being the best possible employee experience that would cause employees to have to be torn away from their job just to get home and get a few hours of sleep before racing back to work, and 1 being the absolute worst experience that would cause even the most motivated employee to opt for the lowest paying fast food job instead of remain where they are. So Spencer, what engagement score would you give The Intern?
Purely in a work sense, meaning, you know, just related to what you read here, the criteria of just racing back to the office. Like, I think Becky's character is a good example because she's just always working. Frankly, she's always stressed and always going, but she's highly engaged. I mean, it's clear. So if we're just talking about engagement, it's a pretty solid 9 or 10. In my head, though, I'm thinking because of the risk of burnout and the unsustainability of the frenetic pace that Becky operates at. Again, I'm just using her as one example. I think overall the organization's operating at that pace. I think you have to be careful that we don't assume that is sustainable forever. So for that reason, sounds like I'm on Shark Tank. For that reason, I'm out. Now, for that reason, I would probably give it an 8. Again, just because I don't know about the sustainability of the pace.
Yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal environment. There's a lot of good stuff going on, good people making it happen. I will worry a little bit about the balance.
Yeah.
What about you?
I agree. I think just based on the engagement principles we talked about today on our podcast, I would probably give it a 9. I think there are incredible takeaways from Ben and Jules, you know, the communication and recognition and ownership and proactivity and caring personally. So that would make it a 9. Overall, I think probably an 8 because of everything that you can see, like a lot of factors. No workplace is perfect, but yeah, an 8 or a 9 for sure.
Well, thanks, Kenna. It's been good to be with
Spencer.
you here to talk about The Intern. And
Same.
We will. We haven't actually decided what our next movie is going to be. So, audience,
stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for the big announcement on whatever that's going to be. Thanks for joining us today on the Engaging People podcast. I'm Spencer Taylor. I've been joined by Kenna Bryan. Appreciate it. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye.